Jairzinho, Rozenstruik, Gaziev. This problem has to stop. When is Dana White ever going to learn that? Putting a guy who's had one fight in the UFC up against a guy who's had multiple fights in the division was not going to work. I was a fool for picking Nurmagomedov to beat Strickland. I can accept that. But it's like Dana White never learns from his mistake and it's like, you know what, let me throw in Shamil Gaziev, who beat up Martin Bude. Martin Bude was a punching bag. If no one throws back and you just punch someone in the corner, that's not that impressive. And then to main event them off that, okay, he did well in the Contender Series, but it was way too early to main event him. You've got people like Rozenstruik who would die for a main event and would put on a better performance than Gaziev did. Gaziev isn't a fraud check or like a fraud yet. You want to talk about a fraud? Nurmagomedov. Yes, I gave him a chance, another one, and he just embarrassed me. So, Shamil Gaziev, I'm not going to call him a fraud yet. I need to see him fight another opponent. Body shots from Jairzinho, Rozenstruik were so effective today. Like, he was doing them earlier on, but it was in like round 2 when you were seeing him land it more and more, and you were seeing Shamil Gaziev breathing through the mouthguard. When a fighter is breathing through the mouthguard, they know that their cardio is failing them massively. And I know they're at heavyweight and doing 5 rounds is extremely hard. But Jairzinho, Rozenstruik, I believe one of the commentators said his cardio was going. I don't think it was, not at all. If his cardio was going, he wouldn't be able to put on that type of volume at heavyweights, by the way, and just keep going down low to the body and jabbing him in the face, using the bleeding legs, as McGregor said. He jabbed the bleeding face off him, and he just kept jabbing him in the face. And he didn't move his head. I didn't really expect it. He's a heavyweight. Don't expect them to be like Ilya Topuria, moving their head every minute. And whilst this was happening, Shamil Gaziev is just getting redder and redder and redder. Some people would say he's built like a bag of milk. He's just got like this wide, blocky waist, built like Tyson Fury. And Jairzinho, Rozenstruik, improvements in the takedown defense. I always have rated his takedown defense, but it's only looked bad in certain fights when he comes up against a proven wrestler, not a thrown-in guy like Shamil Gaziev, who there was no setup with some of the takedowns earlier on in the fight. I'm not talking about when he got the takedown, but earlier on it was just like rushing into like the guard and then trying to clinch, but then Jairzinho, Rozenstruik can see it coming and then prevents it and then moves across the cage. No, I'm wrong actually. His footwork against the cage weren't good, but yeah, he was backing up into the cage when he was trying to escape the clinch, and that's so dangerous because you put your back up against the cage and he cuts off the cage, you're so open for that straight punch down the middle because you can't move out the way. But to be fair, his movement, apart from that, like there was a good sequence in the fight where Jairzinho, Rozenstruik started to move his head in the corner. That impressed me a lot. But for Shamil Gaziev, he should not be running up into top 15 opponents yet. Jairzinho, Rozenstruik, I want to see him fight Derek Lewis, the fight that was meant to be made, but because a new fight opportunity came up, they had to do that. So that's the fight you have to make. It's the fight that everyone wants to see, and it's the only fight that makes sense. And Shamil Gaziev, who should he fight? I want him to just fight some like unranked heavyweight. That makes more sense. I'm trying to think of like, who could it be? I can't think at the top of my head. It's really early in the morning. I can't think of who it should be. But overall, a good performance by Rozenstruik. He survived the ground and pound, which just won Gaziev that first round. But after that, he was done. Just like Nurmagomedov, these, not fraud checks because I'm not going to call Gaziev that, but these guys who come in after one fight and they get like a finish in the first round. They get the main event. They do better in the first round than the ranked guy. And then after that round, it all falls apart. It all goes wrong. It goes down the S word. I'm not going to go into too much detail on this, but Vitor Petrino versus Tyson Pedro. Very poor fight. For a co-main event, that's not a co-main event type of fight. Light heavyweight. Tyson Pedro looked a bit gun-shy. Vitor Petrino was just popping out that jab, leg kicking, and then like pushing him up against the cage and hugging him. That's what he does. I did say that Vitor Petrino is not a guy that does that much damage in fights. It's a lot of hugging. Okay, he did damage in his last fight against Modestus, but Modestus is kind of not the most durable opponent. Look how Rozenstruik was able to like crack that bone of his. Not only that, Tyson Pedro is not really known for being the most durable guy. He survived. And that is because Petrino, when he's not throwing with combinations, with his power, I've not really seen it properly. I've seen it in the Modestus, I saw it in the Contender. But apart from that, it's been a lot of like hugging and becoming a wrestler and wanting to mix up a bit of jiu-jitsu. So that's all I've got to say about that. Mohamed Mokaev, Alex Perez, that fight let me down a lot. I was expecting way more from Mohamed Mokaev, but honestly, forget about the title shot. That shouldn't happen. He needs to fight like a Brandon Moreno. Even a Brandon Royval's going to cause him problems if his boxing's that bad. Like, his boxing, it was very underwhelming. And Alex Perez didn't look good either. But what I didn't like about Mokaev is he's usually a guy who can get takedowns, and even if they get up, keep getting them back down. His takedown offense was horrific today. Like, he was trying to not get kneed in the head, it felt like. You know how fighters can kind of like pull guard? He was kind of like pulling for like a takedown, but if he couldn't get it and he was struggling, he would just sit down, looking like he was going to go for a double leg and just holding that position. And he was tired, so maybe that was what he was doing due to the fact that he was tired. But that weren't good enough, because Alex Perez, I did say I didn't think he'd do it, and he did look for like a submission, like front headlocks. And there wasn't really much he could do apart from maybe take the back, but he didn't want to do that and then lose a position and then end up on his back. That'd be the worst possible outcome. But honestly, Alex Perez, there's an argument for him winning that fight. I know it might look like that Mohamed Mokaev landed more, but we don't always look at that. We look at damage, we look at effective control. Mohamed Mokaev in round 1, okay, you can say he won that. But round 2 and 3, I think Perez won that fight just because the striking wasn't anything significant from Mokaev or Perez. Yeah, he got one good suplex on him, but from that suplex, it didn't lead to like a massive ground and pound or anything. So it's a fight where Alex Perez just won, in my opinion, and that's not a good look. I know on paper you'd be like, Alex Perez isn't a can. He's not. But for Perez's activity compared to Mohamed Mokaev's and the improvements I've usually seen from Mokaev, that should be a way better performance, but it weren't. It was just boring, hugging. It was like watching Merab at times just hug someone, but this was way less entertaining. Like, Merab's actually entertaining at times. Mokaev, boring, honestly, in that fight. Brandon Moreno, he's not ready for any of these top-ranked guys. He will get finished because his cardio didn't look too good. Okay, he was sick, but he shouldn't have took the fight if he was sick. And I know you're going to be like, oh, he should take the fight because he needs some money. I'd do the same thing if I was in this situation, but even up before watching that fight, I still think a Brandon Pantoja was just an extremely hard fight for him to take already. So yeah, Umar Nurmagomedov, or whatever you want to call it. I'm sorry for any people who are from the Dagestan region. Very good performance, but that first round almost shocked me. We were looking at maybe one of the biggest underdog wins in UFC history. Because when he dropped him at that moment, oh my god, the panic I had. And I'm not even Dagestani or anything like that. But it was the fact that I thought for one moment that Bekzat Almakhan could have finished him. Because even though he got ragdolled on the ground, it is Umar Nurmagomedov. This is not a fair matchup on paper. How is a guy who should be fighting Corey Sandhagen, the guy who's going to be a title contender, have his opponent fighting an unranked guy who's making his debut in the UFC? I don't care if he's had fights in the other promotion and if he looks like he's going to be a massive prospect or like a good prospect. You don't need them type of fights. He's been there, done that. He's had his fights against Nate Menes, against the Sergey Morozovs. He's had the unranked guys. Obviously, they're not amazing, but he's had the unranked fights. You don't need another one. Like, Dana White doesn't need to protect him, and he's done that with some fighters, like protecting them by giving them like foolish opponents. And Umar did what he does best, holds them down, but made it a bit more like activity-wise, because some fighters in his position would have just looked to hold and hug and just survive and not want to take a punch. But he was like, nah, F that, let me just strike with him on the ground and do some damage. And it worked, which is great. And it has to be for like Corey Sandhagen. It's not a title shot or anything like that. That'd be foolish. But yeah, that's the type of fight I'd want to see. Steve Erceg versus Matt Schnell. Again, I don't know why I've picked decision. Matt Schnell surviving a fight with his chin is like trying to ride a bike with no wheels. It just won't work. And against Steve Erceg, it got exposed for what it was. Again, Steve Erceg's not a guy who knocks out people, but he was able to knock him out because Matt Schnell stays there too long in the pocket, overthrowing and trying to go toe-to-toe. If I'm Matt Schnell in his brain, I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm not looking to trade toe-to-toe. My chin cannot handle it. Don't stand there in the pocket and leave your chin ready to go toe-to-toe, because Steve Erceg, although he gets hit a lot and he doesn't have the greatest head movement, what he does have is a chin. And he's at flyweight. And Matt Schnell don't hit hard. So he's going to be able to absorb these punches. Even though he dropped Royval, which is like something that just shouldn't happen but did happen, and he ended up getting submitted anyway. But Steve Erceg was able to take these punches in the pocket but just bleed up Matt Schnell. Throwing straight punches in the pocket and mixing up like a hook on the end of it. So, honestly, Matt Schnell, it sounds unfortunate, but I think he's going to get cut eventually. He's just not UFC level. I really don't think he is. He's just one of them guys where he needs to have like a moment where he comes up. He needs good matchmate opponents to win fights. Otherwise, he ain't going to win, because give him a jiu-jitsu guy. Maybe that would be more favourable. A guy who's going to mess about on the ground, not just a guy who's balanced or a striker because his chin can't handle it. Then you got some honourable mentions with your Eryk Anders, where, again, just boring, just hugging, taking people down. But Vinicius Oliveira against Benardo Sopaj, what a massive comeback from Sopaj turning into a wrestler, which he does do at times, but not predominantly, to then being put on the back foot. And because Vinicius Oliveira has his hands down as he's walking forward, it's kind of hard to see what he's going to do next. So as he goes for the flying knee, fight's done. He gets knocked out cold to the point where I think he's dead. But he's not dead, thank God. And he got up and made his way out of the cage. But I'm just saying, that's what it looked like, and it was really bad. So he's going to be out for a long time. He's going to have a big suspension. That fight that was booked for him, that's going to be cancelled, because you ain't coming back straight after when you get brutally knocked out. Not at all. And the fight that shocked me the most on this card, Aiemann Zahabi versus Javid Basharat. And yes, I know his coach is Faraz Zahabi. I can't pronounce it. Zahabi. It's really early in the morning right now. But Zahabi, honestly, he did win that fight. And it just sounds stupid to say, but it was because Javid Basharat, he had a good first composed round. But round 2, he's getting a bit sloppy. Round 3, his setups are completely gone, and it was like he was desperately shooting him for a takedown and he couldn't get it. And that's the worst thing, when you're shooting him for a takedown and you're Basharat, I know that you're striking, it's working, but you're losing confidence because he was getting hit on the way out. He was doing well in the entries into the pocket, but then in the way out, he was getting hit badly. Well, not badly, but he was getting hit. Because no really damage was done in the fight. It was just a point fighting type of boxing match. And Javid Basharat just fell off. He's known for a guy for having a good IQ. But it felt like he wasn't using IQ. It was more frustration and trying to land on him because he was struggling to land clean. And then look for a finish. But anyways, yeah. And then we also had Christian, Leroy, Duncan, Claudio Ribeiro, where I believe Duncan is improving. We're seeing him mix up more takedowns and stuff now. We only got one, but he's trying to mix it up more and more, clinching, because he knows that it's kickboxing, it's effective, but sometimes it can be telegraphed. But he has looked better in each fight. It looks like he's improving. And then we had Ludovic Klein, AJ Cunningham. I don't even want to go into too much detail. That fight was just picking up a guy from the pub and telling him to fight against a ranked guy. Okay, that's maybe an exaggeration, but I mean, AJ Cunningham's a guy who should be fighting a lower unranked guy. Ludovic Klein's been around too much to be given a fight like that on short notice. Inevitable finish, which it was. And then Loic Radzhabov, Abdul-Kareem Al-Selwady. You know what? Abdul-Kareem Al-Selwady really disappointed me. Really. His chin didn't look great. He got dropped. I believe Abdul like kept rocking him at times, but he's not really got a good chin. I thought it was better than it actually was. It's actually really bad. I know if you hit people in certain spots on the chin, they can get knocked out, but it was like, as it grazed him near the temple area, he just got like flatline knockouts. It looked like he took like a massive left hook, which he didn't, but that's what you would expect if he got hooked to the head or something and he was just out cold. So I do not rate that guy's chin. It was a lot of like clinching. Loic Rabzabov looked much bigger than him. His leg kicks weren't even that effective, even though he was trying to do them. Didn't really do anything to Rabzabov because he just kept coming forward. And then when they went to the ground, he was the one landing the ground and pound. So disappointing performance by him. But yeah, that's it. Thank you for watching. Talk to you soon.